All right, welcome to a special pre-Cali Classico Aftershock. The Earthquakes and Galaxy face each other at Dignity Health Park this weekend. And here to sort through the absolute mess, chaos that is the Los Angeles Galaxy is Sean Steffen from American Soccer Analysis. Sean, how you doing?
How's it going?
Well,
good to be back.
Eagle-eyed watchers will know this is not your first time on this show. In fact, last season you came on to help us break down the Houston Dynamo as a previous data analyst for the Houston Dynamo.
That's
so
right.
Fans may be confused as to why you are the arbiter of truth for the Galaxy. But let's set them up a little bit because you actually have a storied past with the Galaxy that goes well before your Dynamo days. Bring us up to speed.
I wouldn't call myself the arbiter of the Galaxy by any chance, but I do have strong.
The arbiter of truth of the current situation of the Galaxy.
We'll see. So my past with the Galaxy goes back to when I first got into MLS. I was in Georgia, Statesboro, Georgia. Atlanta United was a long way from existing. There was no team in Florida. There was just not a team in the South. So I gravitated towards Landon Donovan, who was my favorite player. So growing up, I was a Galaxy fan. And then my first attempt at a career was out in LA. So I went out there, and then first thing I started doing there was going to Galaxy games to make friends and stuff. I joined Angel City Brigade at the time. I guess I don't know when you're no longer a member if you've been gone long enough, but I still consider myself part of that group. I have a lot of good friends there. And then, from there, I was able to leverage my way into writing journalism with ASA data, and then leverage that into a job doing data analysis, which took me to Houston. And now I'm in beautiful Oklahoma City right now, and we are in a severe weather warning. So as soon as I get off this podcast, I'm going to rush to my aunt's house and bunker with my dog. So.
Yeah, we've moved this up to make sure that you have the opportunity to do that. You've also written for LA Galaxy Confidential. In fact, a couple pieces that got a bit of notoriety back in the day. And at some point, maybe we circle back to a little bit of that. But right now, we need to sort through everything that's going on with the LA Galaxy. So you were an Angel City Brigade shirt. Why don't we just jump in there first? The supporters have this situation where they would like Chris Klein out. I think most of the people in our Slack are quite aware of that situation. It's been a topic in the Quakes Epicenter Slack. But for those who are not fully up to speed, walk us through what's going on between Chris Klein and the supporters groups, and then what's the recent change with some of the members of Angel City Brigade.
Right. So I wouldn't say it's just supporters. I think the idea of the boycott has kind of permeated throughout Galaxy fandom. It's definitely been led by the supporters groups. Chris Klein has been the president for a very long time. The record's been pretty terrible. They just got caught for cheating. And then immediately after that, he signed an extension. And everyone was just aghast. What is it going to take? Right. So that's what got the supporters groups, from my understanding. I'm seeing from the outside, got the supporters groups together to do this this boycott, which is kind of unprecedented if you think about it. There have been a lot of I know Portland does their boycott for merit, and they do they don't sing for a bit, or they don't do concessions. There have been supporter protests in this league before, and a lot of them. But to my knowledge and memory, and I may be wrong, this was the first one where it was we're just not going. This is a boycott. And for the first, I think, 8 games of the season, everyone held the line. The support sections were completely empty, and it was and it got to the point where Chris Klein put out a letter saying that if the Galaxy don't meet specific measurements, then he will step away. It's not really clear what that means, and I think there's some contention about what people want from that. So that was kind of the genesis. And then recently, so Angel City Brigade has been in negotiations with the Galaxy over things like this. And from my understanding, it was their impression from their meetings that Chris Klein wasn't going anywhere. Whether or not that's true or not, whether or not that's, it's up for debate. And that's kind of where where you fall on that issue is kind of where you fall on whether or not you are pro ACB or anti ACB in this situation. Personally, I have so many friends in ACB. It's very hard for me to really vilify ACB for this, but that's kind of what's going on with Galaxy fan culture because they decided to come back. And they now have their own set. I think for the first 10 minutes, they don't sing. They do Klein out chants. They do, do better. They had a TIFO for Open Cup, I think, directed towards the players to, to perform more than their salary, to put their heart into the team, that sort of thing. So it's not like they are not, like they have completely flipped sides. But that has caused this huge fight. It's basically a civil war between the supporters groups of sorts. It's extremely sad to see. And then the latest development was when Angel City Brigade came back, they did a TIFO. And it was a Star Wars night TIFO. So it was around Andor. And the way that these TIFOs are like painted and set up, since it was so big, I think they were kind of separated. And I don't know that for sure. But I do know the official explanation for this. So if you look at one of the, I'm trying to remember my Star Wars, I think it's the AT-AT, the AT-AT. If you look on like the side of one that's being downed, you see the numbers 138, which is the section for the LA Riot Squad, one of the ones that are still holding. Now, if ACB has come out and said, I believe this, that this was a rogue member, basically, because it's not like one person overseeing everything. This is a big TIFO. But that has riled a lot of people up. And to be fair, ACB has not gone unattacked up to that point. Their Discord stuff has been leaked. Their tax records have been leaked. This is like a really ugly situation. And it's extremely unfortunate because ultimately, if this is about Chris Klein and you believe strongly that he should be out, then the result of what's happened, you must conclude that Chris Klein has driven the team to a civil war, among other things. And that's, it's sad. It's not like there was this grand unity between the groups, but there was never this harsh animosity. And from the sidelines, it's really sad. I personally don't agree with ACB crossing the line, but it was a democratic vote, and I do understand that, and I support that, that they're set up that way. So, I mean, it is what it is, but it has definitely had an effect on the field and on the atmosphere at Galaxy games.
Yeah, and the Earthquakes kind of hope to take advantage of a potential down atmosphere there, this weekend. The Earthquakes have gotten results the last two times, although the Galaxy were able to spoil the Cali Classico celebration at Stanford last season. So it's gone a bit back and forth over the last couple of years. What's that? Only for the second time,
right?
I think that's true. I think the last time was when Chris Wondolowski was at the World Cup.
I believe I was at that game. I believe it was 2014 and Jossie's artist. I think it was a Sarvas's artist goal, if I recall.
Yeah, that was a pretty uninspiring game for Quakes.
Yeah, it was the worst Cali Classico I've ever seen.
It was a terrible game. Absolutely terrible. Just on both sides, like the quality just wasn't very good because of players being out and such. So let's come back to I want to talk a little bit more about the kind of situation with Chris Klein and also with Greg Vanney, because you sent this to me earlier and it was out on Twitter. The AEG board, the owners of the LA Galaxy, were supposed to be meeting about the future of apparently Chris Klein plus Greg Vanney.
Right.
A little unclear to me. Is there any update that you have heard coming out of those discussions?
I do not. And if I did, I probably wouldn't be able to say it because, a lot of my sources are close friends. But honestly and truly, I have heard nothing. And I don't know if that was an accurate report or not. I do know that the way that the report was worded, that it was Vanney and maybe Klein, which is to me a little backwards, but we haven't heard any announcements from it. And there was a game, if supposedly they met Tuesday, right? There was a game Wednesday, the Open Cup game. So
and the Galaxy won.
Yeah. So what's the timeline there of when they would announce something, right? They probably wouldn't announce it before. So it's really up in the air, like what is, if anything, is going on there.
Sure. So right now, the Galaxy are tied for effectively in a tie for last place with 6 points with Sporting Kansas City. So not only has there been strife in the stands, there's been a bit of strife in the field. Chicharito even going so far as to call out everyone else, in the press conference after the game last week, a loss at home, 3-1 to Colorado. So, and basically him saying someone else, besides him, in effect, needs to step up and answer these types of questions.
I think he said something needs to change, and that he doesn't know
something
needs to change.
And he said other people need to answer these questions as well. And it's an indication that he felt like a lot of the pressure was on him. rather and not enough pressure going towards some of the other players in the team. That said, the Galaxy are still a formidable team who are generating a lot of chances on the field. They're not going in the back of the net.
Right.
And if you take a look, and you and I, both as being data guys, so for sure, we are looking at this. If you take a look at the American Soccer Analysis, FBref, pick your source, it doesn't matter. They all agree the goals going in versus the expected goals of what should be going in, and the overall impact to the results of that. It makes it look like it's two different teams on expected points.
Right.
The Galaxy should be 4th place in the West. What's going on, Sean?
So I've been watching this for a while, and then for a while I was kind of flummoxed by it myself. But I kind of looked back to the ASA preview I wrote. Encourage you guys to go read that about the Galaxy. Kind of looking at my predictions, and I kind of found my answers in there. I just pat my own back, and it kind of.
Well, I reread that, by the way, before this.
So I'm gonna kind of go through this in segments, right?
Okay.
Because I kind of today was just digging through the interactive tables on American Soccer Analysis. Again, go check that out. And I've kind of found a couple of things. So the first thing I want to look at was like, okay, what's going on with the receiving value, right? So the receiving value is the value you get from receiving the ball in certain areas, right? So generally better if it's in closer to goal, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so strikers, for example, they should be getting high receiving value and getting the ball close to goal. If they're generating a lot of shots with low receiving value, it's probably an indication that they're not getting in good positions for shots, and it could indicate why a striker is struggling.
Definitely. So I was looking at kind of a distribution of where the receiving value was. And if you look at the Galaxy, the highest receiving value is Dejan Joveljic, 0.11 above. That is per 96, above 400 minutes. They call these qualifiers, and above average. That's 0.11. And if you look to the next one, that's Pooch at 0.02. And then after that, and then Chicharito is 0.01, and everyone after that is 0 or less, right? So that's only 3 people that are getting positive receiving value. I then went on to go look at the successful teams in the league right now. How does that look distribution-wise? So LAFC have 5 players that are over. Remember, the Galaxy are at 3. Galaxy have 5. Revolution have 5. Cincy have 4. Philly has 4. San Jose has 4. You guys. So that was like, okay, who has 3 then, right? Like, that's good. And the correct answer there is Seattle and Nashville, right? Nashville's obviously got that sitting back style. Seattle, I'm not sure what's going on there. But that made me dig a little deeper to see, okay, what's the significance there? Because obviously you can have this distribution and be successful.
Yeah, I mean, real quick on Nashville, if I just think about that team, or I even think about Seattle, both of them have dynamic forwards who you can play the ball to their feet and they can create. Not so much the case with a guy like Chicharito, who is a classic finisher, right? So it is a bit of a different situation, in what the Galaxy have personnel-wise and what those teams have personnel-wise.
It's also worth noting that for the majority of the season so far, it's been Dejan Joveljic, and Chicharo's only just now come back from injury.
Fair enough.
They're kind of toying with having them both on the field at the same time because they're not getting much from the wingers, but more on that in a second. So when we look at, next thing I did was like, okay, I'm going to look at the shooting G+ for those 3 teams, the Nashville, Seattle, and the Galaxy, right? Because those are the teams that have that distribution. So if you do that, the top of the list is Hebert, striker, right? 0.07, makes sense. Pooch is 0.06, center mid, right? Schaffelberg of Nashville, 0.04, he's a winger. Mukhtar, 0.03, it's kind of a second striker. Jordan Morris, 0.03, striker and winger. And if you notice, every team has 2 except for the Galaxy. And the one the Galaxy has is a central midfielder. No one else on that list is like, he's like an 8, like not attacking mid, like an 8, right? If you're familiar with Pooch's game, it's about advancing the ball, dribbling the ball, progressive carries, good switches, that sort of thing. But there's kind of something missing in his game. And maybe it's not missing in his game, but it's missing from the Galaxy. And so it kind of should fall on him, but it doesn't because that's not really his style. Or maybe it's because Vanney's not put him in that situation. So moving forward from that, right? If you look at the expected goals and expected assist leaders on those same teams, this is where it gets really interesting. So it goes Mukhtar, Hebert, Jovelik, Morris, Schaffelberg, Lodero, then Pooch. That's 6 people above him from these teams, right? Now, if you want to look at the list of Galaxy players that have more expected assists than Pooch in terms of like per 96, it's 4. It's Jovelik, Boyd, Delgado, and Caligari, who's a fullback, right? So there's a huge hole right there, right? So if you look at goals added, the 2 best players on the Galaxy, Pooch and Brugman, because they kind of do the same thing. They advance the ball, they get the ball to the final third. I think goals added loves them because usually when you do that, you progress that quickly, you get into spaces. There's going to be someone like on a well-built team to receive and translate that, right? What like G Plus is unaware of is whether a team actually has that kind of talent to do anything with it going forward. And I think that's a huge problem with the Galaxy, something I talked about in the preview. So if you have Pooch and Brugman kind of helping you get to the final third, what do you do there? Because right now your only talent there basically are strikers, Chicharito and Jovelik. Jovelik's been struggling, and I would say part of that is probably because he was the only one up there. You go back to those distributions. I think just from memory, he's had a lot of block shots and really close to goal. And I think, when you're the only focal point, you're going to get that happening. And, what do you got? What do the Galaxy have in the wing? They've got Tyler Boyd, who, he's had some goals. He looks, dynamic, but he hasn't been this goal scoring threat. Memo Rodriguez hasn't, last night scored 2 goals, but hasn't been on the field lately, wasn't doing much. Costa just continues to be a bad signing. That was just a bad Galaxy signing. He was bad the 2 years prior to joining the Galaxy. If you look at Davies, it's, Mike Umberto, shout out to him, has the Davies model, which approximates goals added for players. And if you look at the approximate goals added for Costa, he hasn't had a good year in like 3 years, including Europe. So that was just a example. Like when we talk about the Galaxy, I think you and I know this, they do not have an analytics department. They barely have a scouting department. That was kind of brought in, I believe, when Vanney was there, right? And I believe their scout is a former player. So, this team was kind of built in such a way that they run into their own, they're kind of tripping over themselves because you go back and think, well, when they were building this team, who are the wingers supposed to be? Well, it's supposed to be Costa, Cabral, and Grandsir, right? What happened to those signings? Cabral had to be was traded, could not finish. Grandsir was doing all right, but he was too expensive. And then Costa continues to be bad. So that's the problem right there.
Cabral only finishes against the Galaxy.
Yes. There was a joke going around.
As we learned against Colorado, yes.
Yeah, but there's a joke going around because his brother also scored against Galaxy 2 that weekend. So there's a joke going around that, because then I believe the report came out the next day about the possible meeting. So there's a joke going around because I think the Galaxy have statues of players outside that the next statue should be Cabral. So I think it's amusing. Yeah, it's maybe not bad. I don't want to be too down on the Galaxy without knowing the front office dynamics, obviously. But from a distance, it certainly looks like a dysfunctional front office that is now trickling down to a dissatisfied fan base. So when you take all of those things in together,
it affects the on-field product now.
Yeah, so you have a team without supporters at home atmosphere. You have a lot of turbulence in terms of pressure now in the Galaxy, right? You're seeing that in the press conference with Chicharito. Mavinga had a tweet recently where it seemed like he was going into Vanney and then he had to backtrack on it. Maybe that was he didn't need a backpedal. Maybe he just he misspoke, but it certainly seems like he backpedaled it. So you have that. You have Jovelik not finishing at the level he was last year. That could be partially noise. I also think it's because of this roster construction. So that is my grand theory on what's going on. The Galaxy are not built in such a way to finish this grand build-up they have. They're great in possession, they're great at advancing, but they can't actually get it to anyone outside of a forward. And so you can just focus on that, and that's going to make it harder to finish. Ball's not going in the back of the net, and there you have it.
Let's talk a little bit about the tactical side. And I don't know how much insight you have on this or opinion, but one of the things that I keep seeing said is that the Galaxy play better when they play, more like a 3-5-2, which they've done in halves when they've needed to chase games and they've looked good doing it. Whereas they keep starting with more of a 4 in the back, usually a 4-4-2 or some variation of it. what's your opinion, on the whole kind of 3-back versus 4-back? Should they be running out of 3-5-2 at this point?
Well, I think in my preview, I was very adamant that they needed to be 3-5-2. Throughout the season, I think Vanney very much likes the 4-3-3, so that's how they were starting. And then he kind of had to work his way to, the second half doing 3-5-2 because they were in trouble getting stuff. Keep doing that. Then I believe there was a couple games he started 3-5-2. And now the last game he did a 4-4-2 diamond.
Yes, that's what I saw that, and I saw 4-4-2 in a couple previous games earlier. So
I was talking, I hope I can say this, but I was talking to Matt Doyle about this, and we kind of had a disagreement about whether the diamond makes sense. And in my mind, he posted on his article like how the diamond with the fullbacks up led to the goal because they were exposed. I kind of argued that you actually saw that in 2014 a decent amount as well for a very, very good Galaxy team, because when you play possession 4-4-2 and you have your fullbacks up, that's going to happen if you lose the ball. Right. What I like about the 4-4-2 diamond, and I'm not sure it's the right answer, but the one thing I do like about it is that it forces Pooch to be more upfield, right? It gives him more of an opportunity to create those chances that the Galaxy cannot create otherwise. And because in the 4-4-3, he's receiving deep, he's being an 8, right? And he's like the best 8 in MLS, probably the most talented player in MLS. But in terms of impact, he is not the most impactful player in MLS. He's maybe not even the most impactful player in the Galaxy. That may be a stretch, but he is certainly not translating. Like, if you were to come up with an MVP ballot right now, right, he wouldn't be on it. And, that's just not because of talent. It's because, where are the goals, where are the assists? So there's that. So I think maybe the diamond may be a way to continue. 3-5-2 makes sense because you have Chicharito and Joveljic, and you don't have wingers, and you have, as of now, 2 young Argentinian fullbacks. I think they're both Argentinian. And the midfield 3 is their strongest, Brugman, Delgado, and Pooch. So I think that makes the most sense. But right now, it just seems like Vanney needs to settle on something, because I think he settled on the 4-3-3 to start. It didn't work, and now he's just kind of toying around. And it's really hard to get a good baseline of what's good and what's not. Because I noticed in the diamond, he was able to set up 2 really good chances for, I believe, Joveljic. How does that compare to the other formations? I have to really dig into the numbers game by game to see that. But here's the thing about the Galaxy. What I did today in maybe an hour, that analysis, all that stuff, none of that is being done on the Galaxy from an analytics standpoint, because they do not have these people. So, it was an hour's worth of work, but that's still more looking at the stuff than they do. So, maybe that is an underlying problem here, that they can't really empirically explore things like this. They kind of just have to go on vibes and, the coach's, gut, which is a lot. Vanney is a talented guy. I'm sure his gut's right a lot. But without that mechanism for, which I'm sure he had in Toronto, for, okay, what's working, what's not working, what are the problems with the team, how can we address that? It's a bit of a problem. And furthermore, even if they were to figure it out, last year was a disaster until they brought in Brugman and Pooch. They did that during a window that they do not have this year because they are banned because of the cheating. So They cheated. They cannot bring in new signings outside the league this summer. And for whatever reason, in the offseason, they did not go get it. They did not really add to the team in meaningful ways outside of the defenders. So you didn't go get another attacking piece, except, maybe Boyd, but that was kind of a shot in the dark because he doesn't really play a lot of minutes. If you go look at his, go on Football Reference and look at his minutes per season, he very rarely plays over 900 minutes in a year. So definitely a shot in the dark there. So, but ultimately they didn't really do much to change his team, and they don't have the opportunity going forward. So when people are saying, the numbers say they should be better, I'm very skeptical of that because they're not playing better than last year. That's for sure. In terms of the end of last year, they're playing worse. They haven't done anything to improve on that, and if anything, they're backsliding because of from the things I was saying earlier, because they failed to address the clear underlying problems of what was holding them back. So I don't know. I am very much lower on the Galaxy than the numbers are.
Yeah. So, and Greg Vanney, by the way, has said he would like to have that data analyst. So, Greg,
which is interesting because it's
hire Sean. All right.
So what's interesting about that is
there's my plug. I know you got a job
you.
these days and don't need the Galaxy, but I'm sure you would appreciate a call from the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not? Right. Hey, real quick while I got you, I'm kind of curious, and maybe you haven't thought too much about this, but right now Christian Espinoza, MVP candidate, G plus has never really loved the guy, but he's been putting in assists for years, suddenly scoring goals in addition to the assists. I'm curious with some of these tactical questions around how the Galaxy should play. How do you think Vanney would or should set up in order to be able to try to slow down Christian Espinoza? Because when he's on, the Quakes are on, and when
Right.
when you can slow him down, the Quakes become pretty mortal pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to look at do you know off the top of your chance what phases he's producing in?
I mean, largely he's been producing, I would say, out of mostly transition phases.
That would be my guess too. Yeah.
So as he gets a lot of XA out of corner kicks. Well, although the Quakes haven't scored on a corner this year, so he's getting a lot of shots generated, but not any goals so far.
That makes sense. I mean, what I'd say about that in terms of I think Vanney is especially at home, he's very set on playing the Galaxy style, and that's going to be possessing the ball. When you watch the Galaxy midfield, it really is something to watch, like the midfield three, because there's some of the two of the best G plus getters in the league are in the Galaxy midfield. So that's how they possess the ball so well. They move it around. But that does, open the door for a transition game. And that seems to be just from, I don't watch a ton of Quakes games. MLS is kind of set up now, so you can't really watch a ton of games outside of your team, unfortunately. Right. So I haven't really got a chance to watch them a ton. But, just from knowing from last year, knowing the players, that sort of stuff, that would worry me, the transition game, because it's not like they're creating this great danger from build-up. Plus, you guys have this great new defensive midfielder to go and win that ball and start a transition.
Right. That helps out a lot.
Don't really have something equivalent. They were playing Yuri Russell in the diamond, which is an interesting one, but it's also on the older side. That's definitely a possession-oriented guy as well. So, there's that. So if they go diamonds, you could see, they lose the ball, the fullbacks are advanced, then it's, game on for those speedy wingers.
Right, and struggled in transition against Colorado last week.
Yeah, and then, you have Bobacy to hold it up, which is, I think ultimately that, they have the right pieces right now to hurt the Galaxy. But, I mean, honestly, every team they've played has shown out that they have the right pieces to beat the Galaxy. So I'm not sure how special that is for the Quake. But they are definitely doing great this year. It's been fun to watch, not as a Galaxy fan, but just as a, fan of just seeing teams get smart, because they build an analytics department. They've really started thinking progressively in ways that I'm envious of, quite frankly, because there really is no reason why San Jose, who spend so little, should be so much better than the Galaxy, who spend so much, outside of effort and clearly thinking and an organization that runs optimally. Right.
No, it's from a Quake side, good to see. And certainly, keep sounding, the trumpet over there, Sean, because there was a day when I was sounding that same trumpet, and look what happened for the Quakes. So it can still happen for you as well. And hopefully they take your advice and bring you in for something like that.
I didn't say me.
I'm just saying. That's just my opinion.
I think it's a tournament.
I can have my opinion too. It's my show, right? I can have my opinion.
Right.
I appreciate the truth teller, Sean Steffen, joining us today. Sean, how can people, obviously we got the Twitter down here at Sean Steffen. They want to find your work on ASA. You wrote the Galaxy preview this year. You've also been a part of an interesting project called the Replication Project.
Right. Yeah.
Do you want to give me 30 seconds real quick about the Replication Project in ASA and some of the things that you've contributed to in that regard?
Yeah, I don't know how to do this in 30 seconds, but one thing we've found over the years is that the literature on expected goals is that it is a good predictor of wins as well as goals. It's designed to predict goals, but it somehow predicts wins. I shouldn't say somehow. Goals should predict wins. But what we've noticed for years is that it does not predict wins in MLS, like at all. It's really bad at it. And it's okay, what's weird about MLS when you compare it to the Big Five? So, Elliot McKinley did a replication article replicating the earlier studies on expected goals and winning in the Big Five. And then MLS. And then from there, Elliot, me, and I guess he doesn't like his name being out there.
Teodo football. Teodo football.
Teodo football.
Friend of the show. He's been on here before too.
We kind of put our heads together and tried to start thinking of why and like what are some possible explanations. And we kind of landed on this idea that the salary cap in MLS greatly obviously it levels the playing field, but it kind of also eliminates things that could be factors that complicate the equation, specifically money. So if you think about it this way, expected goals, predicting that like Man City are going to win, right? I mean, it's kind of obvious Man City is going to win. Look at all the talent they have, right? So
yeah, is it money or is it expected goals, right?
Exactly.
Which side drives which more?
Right. So what we found was that expected goals continues in all leagues to be a great predictor of goals. But when it comes to wins, it's really dependent on what we came upon as something called Gini, which is an economics thing, but it's basically a distribution of wealth. What we did was based on a distribution of points in the league to kind of see like which leagues are fairer than others in terms of the distribution of points. Obviously, in Europe, you get like the points accumulate at the top, and then you have guys at the bottom. So it's this big difference. In MLS, they're more grouped together. And what we found was, just as an experiment, we took teams in Europe that were in the same XGD range. So like Man City versus like Arsenal or something, right? And then we tested just those games. And we saw that they were just as bad at predicting between those games as an MLS game, which, you know, kind of...
When teams are more even.
Right.
Right? It's a bit difficult to predict who the outcome is going to be. And probably in MLS, I have to imagine, home field means a heck of a lot more than almost any other factor.
Yeah, we looked into weather and home field advantage as well. Kind of the stuff that... Because we also see the same stuff in USL, NWSL, all these leagues that have similar-ish structures. So a lot of the MLS-specific explanations kind of... We talked about this in the article, kind of like fall to the wayside a little. We conclude that the main thing going on is this Gini thing. Like when you have a league where everyone is clumped together, the way MLS is, you have a more fair playing field for everyone. And that is when you can actually unveil the true predictive power of XG, which in terms of wins isn't much. And what we see in Europe is an inflated sense of what XG can do for wins, because it's not really reading wins. It's reading finance. Right. I think what David Goss says, that goals cost money. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. And, you know, if goals cost money, then yeah, the more money you spend, the more goals you're going to get, the more expected goals you're going to get. And your overall team, all the other things that help you win, is also going to be boosted because those guys are paid a lot of money. Those are good players. So you have all these contributing factors that kind of influence expected goals in ways that shouldn't, that do not in MLS. So that's kind of the thesis we landed on, and we were lucky enough to, Elliot was really good at running the experiments to kind of validate our theories. And then, we were able to put it out there, and we got really, really good response from both here and in Europe. So that was pretty exciting for us.
Yeah, and more to come. There's more replication project work coming. So, you know, look forward to that in the future from Sean and others at American Soccer Analysis. Sean, thanks again for coming on the show. Always good to talk to you. You know, maybe on occasion we've been able to grab you for a post game. You know, I'll connect with you and see if that might be a possibility this weekend as well.
Sure, if I survive these tornadoes.
Well, let's start with that. So you survive, your dogs survive. You know, make sure that grandma and everyone else is surviving, and everything will be good. Try to avoid tornadoes. They tend to kill wicked witches and stuff like that, and can cause a lot of problems there in the Midwest. So.
They sure
All
do.
right. Thanks a lot, Sean. Have a good rest of your day. Take care.
Bye, everyone.